Hello, I'm Hilary McClure, Multimedia Director at Cybercrime Magazine. Welcome to Let's Talk SOC, a Cybercrime Magazine podcast series brought to you by Secureworks, a leader in cybersecurity, empowering security and IT teams worldwide to accelerate effective security operations. Joining me today is Lisa Washburn, Senior Director of Product Management at Secureworks. Welcome, Lisa. So great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Hilary. Appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
So, Lisa, to start off quickly, do you want to just tell us a bit about your role at Secureworks before we dive into the episode?
Absolutely. I've worked in a variety of roles in cybersecurity for most of my career, including consulting, business development, product management, strategy. And so at Secureworks, I've been here for about 4 years as part of the product management organization. Currently, my team of product managers are responsible for our Taegis XDR platform in terms of the core platform services, how data is collected and flows through the platform, the data lake, including searching and reporting on the data, and then the extensibility of the platform to others via our ingestion and detection engines.
Great. And so, our conversation today is going to be centered around the economics of cybersecurity. My first question for you, Lisa, is what should IT or security leaders focus on when determining what areas to invest in as part of their security program?
I think it really comes down to answering one question, although it's a very complex question, which is what people, processes, and technologies do they need to either maintain or implement to properly protect their organization? It's a big question. And, the answer is going to be based on things like their perceived risks, their organization's level of risk tolerance, any regulatory requirements they have, the makeup of their computing environment, the needs for access to their systems, for their employees, their contractors, their partners, and the effectiveness of controls they might already have in place. So those IT leaders may choose to conduct an assessment around all that stuff on their own to answer that question, or many organizations rely on third parties to help with that such assessment. But either way, they're going to want that assessment to take a few things into consideration. So first is really ensuring that the right security tools are in place so they can detect and investigate and respond to security threats. So things like multi-factor authentication, how they're doing patch management, an XDR solution like ours. So those are things that they're going to want to understand what they need to have in place. And then they're going to want to, as part of that assessment, keep in mind that they're really planning for current and future state. So, for instance, if they're intending to move workloads to the cloud over the next 3-year period, then they need to account for that. The next thing that I think they need to take into consideration when they're trying to figure out what to invest in is considering whether they have access to timely and actionable security intelligence. And this is so they can react when new threats arise, and they can adjust that security plan for changes in the threat landscape. So the plan is great now, but things will change. And so for this, again, they can look to their internal staff to garner that security intelligence. They can look at third-party research. They can use peer communities or a combination of those. And then I think the other thing they need to take into consideration is doing an inventory of their people resources. So do they have the right size team with the right skills to support their security program? And another thing to consider, given that we have a shortage, a skills gap shortage from a security professional perspective, is do they have the right continual education and upskilling programs in place to keep those employees engaged and obviously to keep their skills sharp? And they may need to consider filling resource or talent gaps by engaging with security service providers, or leveraging outsourcing partners or contractors to perform tasks that might be cost prohibitive to staff internally, like threat hunters or incident response professionals. And so after they determine their technology and people approach, the process piece, they're going to want to make sure that the measures that they have or they intend to put in place are aligned with the processes that teams across the organization have implemented. And so certainly cross-organization coordination and alignment is part of that whole process.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm glad you brought up the talent gap because that is so important to take into context in basically every conversation now. And as far as teams go, how should security leaders be working with others in their organizations? Let's just isolate it to that for now, to lower risk and improve security.
So my feeling is security should really be considered a team sport, right? With players coming from multiple parts of the business. It really shouldn't just be down to the security team and the leaders. For instance, it's really important to work with the procurement team and make sure that they're doing the proper due diligence in vetting suppliers and vendors, especially if they have access to internal systems. The same is true for partners. So many organizations have all kinds of different partners that they work with across the organization. So the security team should collaborate with those teams across the business around how we're engaging business partners. Are we establishing standard requirements for partners to ensure that by partnering with them, they're not opening up their organization to additional risk? And then something that a lot of companies have found recently is it's a good practice to plan up front how you and your partners are going to respond if a security threat is identified that could impact technology that's in use at the company or with your customers. Also, across the org, it's important for an organization's IT, dev, and data ops teams to embrace a security mindset. So security is not just an afterthought. And then this one's really important too. So certainly not least, last but not least, but there should be a commitment across every team in the company to prioritize employee security awareness training. So they should be educating their employees that all these security processes and standards that they have in place are necessary to protect the company, to protect the customers and partners and its employees. And they should continually be reminding their employees about new ways that attackers can try to gain access to company resources by catching any one of them off guard.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so, as far as getting to that place, how can security leaders gain mind share from their board and executive team and, buy-in as they work to justify their security budgets to implement things such as those security awareness training programs across all departments, et cetera?
Well, no amount of spend is going to guarantee 100% protection. For that reason, it's really important to reframe the conversation around security spend away from it just being an unfortunate necessity to kind of weaving it into the business initiatives as an enabler, because we're finding that businesses are needing to demonstrate security due diligence to their customers and partners and their employees and their investors to really gain confidence from those entities. So one approach that security leaders can use is to ensure that their security initiatives gain support and traction with their organization by tying them into the company's larger risk management initiatives. So some thoughts here, maybe partnering with the risk management team or finance to determine if cyber insurance is right for the organization, for instance. Now, one note on cyber insurance is it's definitely not a silver bullet, and many cyber insurance companies require certain levels of security robustness before they'll even insure an organization. So it's something to tie the security program in with that. Also, security is certainly an aspect of a company's governance, risk, and compliance strategy. So security leaders should work to coordinate their security plans with the company's GRC goals and requirements, larger outside of just information security. And then lastly, they should ensure that the company's overall business continuity and resiliency plans cover security threats. So not just physical threats or disasters, natural disasters and things. And then they should evaluate whether their organization is spending the right time preparing and doing things like running tabletop exercises to confirm if a breach occurs, are they ready and can they mitigate the impact?
Absolutely. Excellent. I love all of your answers. So, as far as what we've covered in this conversation, is there anything else that you would want listeners to know about that you haven't discussed yet?
Well, I think it's important to, again, recognize that there isn't a magic formula to figure out exactly what the right amount of spend is from a cybersecurity perspective to gain the results you're looking for. That's why it gets a little complex. You have to look across the business. You have to understand what your goals are and then kind of use a little finesse and art to put a program together that the board and the executive team can get behind.
Wonderful. Well, Lisa, it's It's been such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for coming onto the show and lending to us your expertise and your perspective. This has been wonderful.
Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, our pleasure.